I've heard the nafs al-lawama is the consciousness, the conscious of a person that is mindful of the soul. So is this nafs always there but stronger when we tame the nafs al-amara, or is it only covered and accessible as a next level once we conquer the ego? So the ego is, of course, of levels. So we have the nafs al-amara. This is the nafs that inclines towards evil. The nafs al-lawama, it's like the conscious. Yes, for example, when you do something bad, this is the nafs that you feel bad about it. You have it's also very closely associated with the heart, right? That the heart, when the heart is not doing good, this nafs will tell you that when you've done a sin, this nafs will tell you the heart that the heart, it's not in a good state because of this dark thing that you did. This is the nafs al-lawama, and it's always there. It never disappears. Right? It's always there. The nafs al-lawama, when you do something bad, it's always there. So this nafs, it doesn't really grow in strength, but sometimes this nafs, for some people, they allow this nafs to sort of take over. This is people who, blame themselves for things that they shouldn't be blaming themselves for. So this nafs can go haywire. It can go wrong, right? This is, people who maybe blame themselves for things that, for example, sins done in the past, right? Mistakes done in the past, you blame yourself over and over again. You never forgive yourself, right? This is a problem, right? So this nafs can go haywire. This is why the scholars, they mention the istighfar, it means ghufran, that you seek out the ghufran of Allah. What is that? It's a shield, or it's a barrier, or it's something that it's a thing that cordons off your sins. So the sin, you did the sin, but then you cordon it off and you turn away from it. You seek Allah's forgiveness, and then it's a thing, basically, you cordon it off, you erase it. You put it behind you, you cordon it off. This is what the istighfar does. So a person shouldn't allow this nafs to sort of go haywire and start to take over, right? You shouldn't allow that to happen. So this particular nafs, when it goes haywire, it basically keeps the person focused on the past. And you can never overcome past sins, right? You can't, I did this thing, it was so bad, I did that, I did this, and so on and so forth, right? So this nafs, it's brought into line and control basically through studying, through knowledge. So we have varying states of the self, or varying nufus, varying aspects of the self. One of the aspects of the self is the rational self. The rational self is fed by knowledge. So knowledge of the reality of istighfar, it will tame the self. That the rational self will sort of, basically, if we're going to do a character, or if we're going to enact it or act it out, this rational self will be the discipliner. It will say to the nafs al-lawama, get a grip. It's okay. Calm down. Allah is most merciful. Relax. It's okay. Calm down. I understand something bad happened, but it's okay. And that nafs basically, okay, will calm down. But that rational self, the sort of enforcer, or that's the aql, the intellect, it needs to be fed. And it's fed by knowledge. So when you feed it with the knowledge, it can then sort of control things. It'll control things. The intellect will come and control and put things in order, right? If we don't study, then we just have the nafs al-lawama running wild and saying this and that, and sort of bringing a person down into depression even, right? So it doesn't really become stronger, but it goes haywire. It can go haywire. But the intellect itself, though, that's what becomes stronger. So you can strengthen your intellect and the power of the intellect and the light that is the intellect. You strengthen that intellect. This is why we call the Quran light upon light. Light, divine revelation upon light, which is the intellect, light upon light. So the light of revelation, it comes and it strengthens the light of the intellect. And then that intellect is empowered. It can control, it can put things in order, and look to rectify the self, treat the heart, and so on and so forth, and have the heart start turning over. Once the heart starts turning over, that also feeds the intellect. It'll strengthen the intellect. The heart starts avoiding sins, and it habituates avoiding sins, and the heart becomes healthy. Then the nafs al-lawama itself, it starts to feel more contented, and then we have the nafs. So this is how it works. This is how the process works. So we talk about the heart turning over, right? Once the heart starts to turn over like an engine, the heart will turn over. turn over and start to work, process, right? It'll start to process. Then this will affect the intellect. But you see how it's a very, very dynamic sort of thing. It's a dynamic sort of thing, right? So I hope that answers the question. So the nafs al-ammara, okay, so when we tame the nafs al-ammara, is it only uncovered and accessible as a next level once we conquer the ego? So the nafs al-ammara, it's something that's always there. So it's always going to be there, but when the intellect, when the aql, and aql, it means control. That's what aql means. Intellect, in Arabic, aql means control. So when the aql is strengthened, then the nafs al-ammara, basically, it's like an animal that needs to be trained. And once you have the aql there to steer the animal's not going to go anywhere. The animal is going to be physically fit and trained. And the animal, for example, a well-trained horse, right? A well-trained horse that is functional and healthy, it's not going to go right when you tell it to go left. It's going to listen. The nafs is like that, right? So the process is about disciplining it, disciplining the self. So you discipline it through dhikr, reading Quran, eating right, and so on and so forth. You do these things, that nafs becomes disciplined. And after a while, that same exact nafs, it'll start to habituate doing good things, and it'll find doing bad things something that it doesn't want, right? And this is a nafs that we call, the nafs becomes what we call maqhura. It becomes like it becomes disciplined. It becomes something that it's in its place. It doesn't do bad because it doesn't want to do bad. It wants to do good, and it's habituated to doing good, right? So this is how you overcome it and conquer it, by doing tahdhib, discipline, riyadatul nafs, exercising the self, right? And it's a process. It's a process. So I hope that answers the question. So this is the process of conquering the ego. And of course, the human self is dynamic. It's dynamic like this. So one thing will affect the other. The soul will affect the heart will affect the soul, the intellect also plays a part, and so on and so forth. But basically, a person who is is observing the religion, practicing, doing all the things that he needs to do or she needs to do, effectively the nafs al-ammara starts to fall into line, come into place, be disciplined, to be fit, and also this nafs is also unaffected by the devils, because this is a nafs, it's a self that's strengthened, exercised, disciplined, muhadhab, right? So, and also the shaitan also starts to avoid this nafs. He'll start to avoid him. He starts to be afraid, actually. This is at the higher levels. This is people who have really disciplined themselves, who are really people of taqwa, faith, right? People, spiritual, people who are spiritually empowering themselves, right? Along the lines the Prophet counseled us with, and also sticking to the prophetic morals, the character, prophetic traits, and so on and so forth, a code of conduct. These people, the shaitan starts to avoid. He starts to just back off. Whoa, I don't have any hand in that person. Little bag of tricks stopped working a long time ago. This person's dangerous now. You just go ahead and devote my resources in another direction. This person's a waste of time. I'm not making this up, by the way. It may sound dramatic and it may sound like it sounds kind of fantastic, but this is real. Shaitan will say, you know what, let me just go and leave this person alone. There's other people who I can try to misguide and try to mess up their lives and so on and so forth. I'm gonna leave that person alone because it's just a waste of my time. Shaitan will get like this. Basically, you have what we call despair from a particular person. You know what, forget it. Just go. Sometimes he'll come back though. Sometimes you play games. He's a major game player. Like, for example, one of these people that were very, very, mashallah, a spiritual giant, Imam Ahmed, one of the 4 imams. So Shaitan actually, he tries to pull a fast one towards the end of Imam Ahmed's life. He goes to Imam Ahmed on his deathbed. Imam Ahmed, he's about to return to Allah. Shaitan comes and he says, "Oh Ahmed, you slipped out of my fingers. You got away from me. You basically escaped, Ahmed." And he starts to bite his fingers. Shaitan says, "Oh my gosh, I can't be there and let you go. You escaped. You're so good. You're so great." Right? Imam Ahmed says to him, "No, not yet. I haven't returned back to Allah yet. My time isn't over yet." He says, no, didn't get me. Or basically, I haven't returned back to Allah yet. and I put my faith in Allah. I don't put my faith in myself. And I rely upon Allah. I relied upon Allah, right? Doesn't rely upon himself, he relies upon Allah. And that's a process, right? That we start to not really rely upon ourselves at all, and we start to, and it's part of tasawwuf, spirituality, that it's a process, right? I don't want to go open, too many doors right now, or too many topics right now, but it's a process of really reliance upon Allah and having tawakkul, and knowing that Allah is going to take care of us, and putting our trust in him and relying upon him, right? And knowing our book, being connected to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so on and so forth. That's a process, all right? So the point is that Shaitan tries to pull a fast one, but Imam Ahmed, his soul is disciplined. So Imam Ahmed, he knows, for example, that, wait a second, my life isn't over yet. I can't make a claim that I know I'm going to paradise. He knows that. He knows that. So effectively, Imam Ahmed, well trained, he's well seasoned. Imam Ahmed knows, and his soul knows, and his nafs amara of Imam Ahmed, trained, disciplined, like a well-trained riding beast, Clydesdale horse, very strong horse, so to speak, right? Disciplined. Imam Ahmed sees through the trick immediately. He says, no. So you can understand, Shaitan will come with the tricks, but even if he comes with the tricks, the nafs that's muhaddab and disciplined will see through the bag of tricks. See through. So that's actually what Shaitan comes to Imam Ahmed with, to be in a state of conceit, which is the next chapter here, or to be in a state of ostentation. I'm this, I'm that, I'm better than him, I've done this, I've achieved that, and so on and so forth. These are tricks of Shaitan. Shaitan knows the diseases of the heart very, very well, because he's a cancer, like a walking cancer. This is Shaitan. Cursed walking cancer. This is Shaitan, and he tries to spread those cancers to the hearts of human beings and also to jinn. This is what Shaitan effectively does.